So now we would like to go to our next guest. We are having an awesome young woman. She believed in herself, and now she has achieved what many of us believe we should be achieving. So Mariana Vasconcelos, she is a founder of Agrosmart, which brings digital agriculture to developing countries with low internet infrastructure under tropical agronomic condition, allowing farmers to make better decisions for a more productive and sustainable agriculture. She is Forbes Under 30, a technology pioneer, World Economic Forum, and many more awards. Mariana, floor is yours, and we are waiting to hear insightful presentation from you.
Well, thank you everyone. Thank you, Deepak, for the invitation. It was amazing. I got to hear the Susan speech for a while. So very inspiring, and I'm so happy to be able to interact with other women. Well, everyone, I am Mariana. I am daughter of farmers and I come from Brazil. Like my family produce corn, coffee, and breed horses as well here. And I grew up very closely to the daily challenge of decision making in the fields, right? And agriculture all over the world is going under a pressure for change, where we need to increase food production in up to 70% in order to feed the world in 2050. At the same time, we have to handle issues such as water crisis. Brazil again is undergoing a very severe drought period where farmers have to adapt. We have like less and less available land, especially when we talk about deforestation. It is such a sensible topic here on like how we can increase our production without expanding new land, and also getting people to stay in farming, as the majority of the young people are leaving the fields to work in the city and in something else. So land is also an issue. And last but not least, climate change, right? Like the climate has been changing and affecting the way farmers produce. Not only it makes their need to learn faster, like it changes everything they knew and how they would consult for academics and experience in order to know what to do. But it also changes the regimes on the water availability, increases the pressure on diseases, pests, and the occurrence of extreme weather events. And when we talk about tropical countries, that is way more intense than other regions because of our climatic conditions. So the farmers being pushed to adapt, right? Like they need to produce more. At the same time, they use less land, less water, and they adapt to climate change. In addition to that, there's also a change in the consumer behavior, right? Like more and more, the consumers want to know where food comes from, how was they produced, if it was sustainably produced, and the pandemic just sped it up. Now everyone wants to understand how resilient is our food system, right? Like how we can ensure we'll continue to produce food. So traceability became an issue. So farmers not only have to handle with the challenge they have to continue producing, but also to report what they are doing so they can comply with the demands of the consumers and the food companies. In Latin America, and is a region that is in charge of producing many of our goods. Brazil is the largest food producer and exporter for several crops, such as coffee, sugarcane, orange juice, right now like chicken and cow meat as well, and the second one in terms of soybean complex. So, and we are the ones who detain Amazonia and several other environmental assets, right? And being pushed by the world on how to produce more sustainably. And what I see, and talking about women in ag and so on, is how important is women participation when we talk about balancing the ESG, right? The environmental, social, and compliance framework, as women are usually more worried and more careful about handling those issues. They are having an exceptional role in helping farmers to digitally transform and to be more compliant. So at least in Brazil, I'm very optimistic because we see a big change in the behavior of the farm, especially after the pandemic. Like everyone gained conscience that the digital transformation was happening to making farmer more efficient. But now they also understand that the technology is here to support them to be more sustainable and that both things can be done at the same time. They are not exclusive. We can produce more. At the same time, we are more efficient in the use of natural resources, more transparent, and more climate resilience. So there's a big market opportunity for not only producing food to the world coming from Latin America, but also to provide environmental services, as preserving nature is now also recognized. And the carbon market's appearance is something that is very relevant, because the trade of risk and return for the farmers have always been more risk for the farmer and more return to the supply chain. And now when we look the initiatives with carbon credits and regulations of the markets, we create a huge opportunity of compensating farmers who do a good job, to validate their investments in the technology and the sustainability, because they are able to monetize that with carbon credits, or like selling their products with a premium to the consumers. And with that all in mind, like seeing the transformations our industry is going through, in 2014, I decided to become an entrepreneur in farming. I really saw how my parents and my family were struggling in order to make decisions and to adapt to climate change. And I have been working with tech for other industries, and we realized, why not use tech in agriculture, that not only I come from there, so I understand the day-to-day, but also for Brazil has such an importance on our economy and for our whole region in Latin America. And the first thing we understood, like, that we needed to support the farmers with, was having data. In Latin America, as many emerging countries, the quantity of data is very low, like provided by the governments or the infrastructure and so on. So we needed to have data. And there was a big challenge, that was connectivity. Until today, like almost 70% of the farmers do not have internet in the field. So how we can collect data and help them to become digital if we don't have any, right? So that was the first step we wanted to address. So we developed an IoT solution with sensors, like we deploy sensors, weather sensors, soil sensors, and so on. But we have a connectivity solution to allow to collect data anywhere. And once we started doing that, we realized there was another issue, that was education. Farmers and agronomists were not ready to just interpret the data. We needed to support them in that journey, to help them to understand what was going on and how they could make better decisions. So we started working on algorithms, on supporting the decision making. So we developed first an irrigation algorithm to tell them how much water what to use, as Brazil was going through that time, and again now in a big water crisis. So our model allowed farmers to reduce an average 60% of water, 40% of energy, and increase yield in up to 20%. And we also deliver to them their carbon avoided emissions with that. Besides it, we have like our own weather forecast, as the lack of infrastructure is an issue. The weather forecasts are not very good. So with a good amount of data, we were able to provide a more precise weather forecast. And we started moving towards predicting models. So like, for example, we can tell 50 days in advance if the coffee farmer will have coffee rust, and that's the main disease for coffee in the region, so that he can decrease the incidence of the disease and the input usage. But even though we are providing tools for the farmers, we saw that the digital transformation process was very complex. And we needed to engage everyone in the supply chain if we wanted for them to actually have access and change. So we started working with the corporations. We work with input companies, helping them on their R&D before they launch a product, so they can have data to orient research and then test the usage of their products, creating more efficient protocols and supporting like the digitalization strategy. We work with food and beverage companies that source from smallholder farmers and family farmers, where we share like the data network that we have and allow for each farmer to individually be supported in their decisions. But we also support the corporation to allocate labor as they provide technical assistance for those farmers, and to mitigate risk, like helping them to adapt to climate change and like have traceability of that supply chain. And last but not least, we support the financial sector to understand better the risk and price better their products. So today, like, we consolidated ourselves as a platform that is working all over the food supply chain with the same data support decision making. In the beginning of this year, we acquired our first company called Agro. With that, we are the largest ag data network in Latin America. We have over 200,000 farmers using our products and really like supporting them in that journey to produce more and connect with the stakeholders while being sustainable. As a woman in this journey, it has been very challenging in the beginning, especially because I didn't study agronomy. I'm a business person, I'm a woman, and I'm young. So by default, everyone would just assume they didn't know what I was doing. And why would I be an innovator in that field if I didn't have the background to do so? So it was very hard to convince people that we were creating something nice and they should try it. I always had lots of openings from the farmers. They would receive me and they would treat me like a daughter, but they wouldn't buy from me because they wouldn't want to talk money with me, right? So like we have to create a more diverse team in order to be able to penetrate the market. And later on, the corporate relations is very challenging as well, as many men still try to diminish our work or our achievements just because we are women. So like gender equality have been a big cause for me, alongside with other SDGs that imply on agriculture being more sustainable, because I really believe in the power that women have on making change, right? In the future, bringing together how to make a better world, how to take care of people as well as business. So like I not only resisted, continue to do that, even though it was challenging in the fields with customers and even with investors to fundraise for my business to grow. But little by little, I formed a network of women, and I'm part of networks today, not Latin America, but especially Brazil and Argentina, on how women in ag can support each other. And the movement is great. Like when I started 7 years ago, there was almost no women. And now, more and more, besides the communities, there is like a Congress of Women in Ag just like this, where we can talk and we can get together. And we see more women taking over the farm operations. Before, there was just the wife of someone, the wife of a farmer, the wife of the executive. And now, little by little, we see women actually running and making decisions in the field. And when they do that, they hire other women and they incentivize that industry to grow. Susan also brought a topic that is very important on that point, on the decision making, right? Brazil this last year just had its first ag CEO in Bayer. So the Bayer Crop Science CEO is currently a woman. We also had the first women president in the last 100 years, like it was just men, of the Rural Association community. So it was the first time that Brazil has a woman president and a president for Mercosur as well. So like all the South America region is now led by a woman on the associations of farmers. So those are important moves that little by little go putting women in power and then creating that network of support. We still see very few Latin American entrepreneurs in ag tech. In California, I see that movement growing. Amy Wu just launched a book on women in agriculture, like from the region of California mostly, but also includes other profiles. And I really believe it's important to tell those stories. Brazil also launched a book on Mulheres do Agro, like women in agriculture, so we can get to know the other women and what they are doing, and in the hope that it will inspire other women to get engaged and get to power. And when we look to board, that's still a challenge. In my company, we do have 2 women in the board, and we continue to fight for having women in every area of software, hardware, agronomy, sales, business, and like it doesn't really matter, but we need to have diversity. But we are a minority, maybe because I'm a woman founder, we make it happen. But when we look to our colleagues in other companies, we continue to be the only women in the room. So I think forum like this one are very important, so we can bring the topic to attention and get more women inspired and connected so they can make a change. I think the digital transformation in agriculture, there's no way back, right? Like we have seen that happening for the past few years, and now it gains speed. It's actually happening because we are finding the business models, we are finding the connections with other markets, such as the fintech world, on how to make credit and intelligence together, in the carbon world. So like we are seeing that move, and it's really important that we don't leave no one behind, no farmer behind. And that's why I believe we need to engage more and more women in those roles, from the farming leadership to the ag tech leadership and founding teams, up to investors and women boards. Because when there is a woman in power, we can empower other women to continue growing. I see the perspective of Latin America is a little bit behind other regions like California and Europe, where the feminist movement is stronger and older. So it has been happening in other sectors and coming to agriculture, but it is growing very fast. And as an emerging region, everything grows in an accelerated speed. So I see a lot of potential on increasing the equality of gender in agriculture for the region, as well as the digitalization journey, right? Like we need to provide almost half of the food of the world for the next years, and there is this commitment of all the stakeholders in the supply chain, government, private sector, NGOs, startups, and so on, to make it happen. So the region can not only export food, but also export technology and safe food and sustainable food. Well, I think I will stop by here, Deepak, like to get engaged with everyone and have like the last 15 minutes to answer some questions, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. Mariana, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And in fact, I just wanted to bring up a very, I'll say that nostalgic memory of you, right? You talked about, I resisted, you were resilient. I can remember, I think it was in Africa, South Africa, where actually you had a fracture in your leg and still you were moving from one meeting to another, right? Not tying down. So that's what is Mariana is all about, and what I believe is women empowerment is all about. With all the pain, all the challenges, she was going from one meeting to another. So Mariana, my question to you would be like, you've already talked about that in Latin America, women are already getting to the senior positions, whether it is a buyer or whether it is other organization or the farmer association. What else can be done, right, to accelerate this thing from other part of the world, which happens to be the male?
Well, I believe we need to connect, and that's why events like these ones is so important. So we can exchange benchmarks and setting goals together. And I think what can be done is like to speed up that. It's still a minority. It's still like one company, and that gets into the news because that's not common. So when a company like Bayer nominates a woman CEO, that's news everywhere. So I wonder like when we will get to a point where this is no longer news because it's just normal. So what everyone can do is to ensure that they have in their own teams, in their own business, women in leadership. Like they have to aim for that, because diversity brings more systemic views, they bring more creativity, and that's what we want as an innovator, right?
Perfect. And second thing is like, coming back to the same, the topic in hand, women empowerment, right? How do you see, like, we have been talking a lot about women empowerment. And if you can see that even this event which we planned, we said we are not going to talk about women empowerment in a panel discussion. We would present the case like Mariana, who have been successful being there, resisted, fought off, and become a global celebrity when it comes to agriculture technology. Do you see that this approach works well, where you create like examples and connect these examples and make people watch, or like you believe like it is more at a holistic level, we have to have more policy based activities? So what's your views on this?
Yeah, I think it's really important to tell stories, because stories make us believe we can do it too. And when I started my journey, I first had like a women investor in my accelerator, and she was a former executive at Motorola. There was another one that was a former executive in Johnson and Johnson, and it was like, wow, like these are the first two women that I meet that have like very high positions, and I'm curious about how did they do it, how they build their career, how do they handle their husbands, because it's such a challenge to balance family and work. And I'm like, I want to learn it. So I was so lucky to right in the beginning of my journey to find that accelerator that had two women in power. And that gave me the first, like, okay, they believe in me and I can do it too, right? And later on, I got other mentors. Like I have a mentor that is Brazilian and he used to live in Germany, and she would help me with business strategies. I have another mentor that is Claudia that used to work at the UN, and today she has her own foundation, All Human Foundation, that she also fights for Latins in the US and equality and so on. But it was like always seeing other women and helping me to dream, to see like if they did, I can do it too. And that's what I try to be as well for younger women, or women that maybe are not younger than me, but they didn't discover their power yet, and that they can have a voice and that they can do. So like having other women telling you it's okay to have a voice, it's okay to say what you want, it's okay to be bossy because we are labeled, right, bossy and everything else because we are not okay to have an opinion. That's important. And so like I believe the use cases and the stories are powerful in that way. And that should be policy, because like the policy is changing because we have women in politics. So like United States electing a vice president as a woman is important, so other women know they can do that too.
That's a very awesome analogy which you have put in across, that if you have more women politicians, you'll have better policies for women for sure. Now let's deviate a little bit on the digital agriculture part of it, which is your core business. How do you see like adoption of these technologies, specifically because now from Brazil you are moving to Argentina, and maybe in your radar would be like other Latin American countries as well, where the challenges are more, as you rightly mentioned, that the penetration of internet on the farm level is pretty low. Even in US, it is 23 or 24%, right? And when you go to Latin America, like you're lucky you're talking about it still in that double digit in Brazil. In some other countries, it would not be in a double digit. How do you still solve those challenges? And are you working on some new advanced technologies which can make within or the connectivity with the farm cheaper or something on that sort?
Yes, I think we do have like three main challenges for scaling digital ag. And the first one is infrastructure. We need to solve connectivity challenge. And for me, it's more a matter on innovating the business model. There is technology. There's satellite, there's narrowband IoT, there's Sigfox, there's so many technology out there. But the things like we are not able to find a business model that it pays the bills. The government doesn't do it, the private sector doesn't do it, because no one can afford it alone. So like being able to split those costs, right, and finding a model that works, that's very relevant. In Brazil, for example, team that is Telecom Italia managed to find a model where they would sell the towers with 4G and 5G, including narrowband IoT, where the cooperatives or the agricultural groups that would make the investments would be able to rescue part of that investment in services. Because what brings the return on investment is not the network, is what they will do with that data that will allow them to produce more and have return on investment. So if you just try to sell the network, that's not going to be anywhere. So they are bundling their network investment with cashbacks that can be rescued in services so the farmer can pay for it. So this is one example. And Brazil, for example, created a committee in the agriculture ministry for connectivity, like bringing everyone to a dialogue and creating a national plan of Internet of Things to have financing, to have elements like how do we solve this, right? So I think it's way more about getting together and finding a business model than the technology itself. And the second problem is education. So like it doesn't matter if we have the tool there if farmers don't know how to use. If many farmers don't even know how to read, it's like, how do we make that accessible? So like we do invest a lot in UI and UX to understand how to dialogue with different levels within the agricultural food supply chain, and invest in training. And that cannot be a cost on our own. It's a cost of the whole industry. It's better to everyone in the food system if farmers are conscious. So that cost should also be split. And until 1.5 years ago, even if you graduated from agronomy, you wouldn't study those things. Nowadays, at least, like they graduate knowing what is a sensor, knowing what is a satellite imagery and what it does, knowing that there is carbon. So like now that there is this direction on education on a public level that starts to work, but we still need reskilling. It's the same challenge of all the 4.0 industries moves, where we need to reskill everyone, because little by little the farmers workers, they won't anymore just be collecting things, they won't be doing things. There's robots, there's different technologies, they need to create those technologies or analyze the data that is an output of those technologies. So we need to invest in reskilling, and that's also a shared cost of everyone. And last would be financing. There's very few financing for innovation. There's financing for buying a machinery, a new tractor, but there's not like innovation for hiring a software company and like or accessing to sensors. So we need to democratize credit, right? And I see initiatives from the Inter-American Development Bank, from Brazilian Development Bank, but it's very too bureaucratic. Farmers won't know how to access credit through a development bank. That's too little. We need commercial credit. We need every bank to be financing tech for agriculture, because actually they diminish their risk. If they invest in that, they will be able to diminish their risk and have better returns. And also fintechs, right? So I do see, and we are investing that on our own, on actually funding the farmer. So not only provide the tech, but we are also bringing them with credit so they can acquire our technology and other technologies to accelerate that transition towards a more sustainable agriculture.
Perfect. I would also like to touch upon your views on the whole concept of regenerative agriculture, and where actually we want to change the basic practices of agriculture itself. No tilling. We all have our digital technologies programmed or structured, or our algorithms based on we'll be tilling, then you'll be putting irrigation, then you'll be putting so many fertilizer, pesticide, growth models. All these set models are based on yield as the primary focus, right? And suddenly we are talking about regenerative agriculture, agroforestry. Do you see these type of things either would be a distraction for digital tech industry?
I believe different production systems coexist. And as technology, we are here to support the improvement of all agriculture models. Like we are here to support traditional ag to become better and to find frameworks where regenerative and other protocols can scale. So like in Brazil, there's many use cases of regenerative agriculture and the integration between forest, crops, and cattle, and how that actually is good. They have more yield, they have less nutrition needs. So like the results are here, but it's each case by each case. There's a lot of effort on rural extension, on education, on studying each case. So what I think we will do is like using our technology to understand those dynamics and create protocols to scale that faster, and they will coexist. Technology is across every sector. It's not like a directed thing. It's there to provide data and support decision making. So yes, I believe in the power of regenerative ag, and I believe a lot of it will move. But what matters is to be better. It's whatever you are as a farmer today, is to do a little bit better each day, right? Is to make better choices. So if in the end we become regenerative or we generate a carbon credit, that's a result. That is an output that is great, but it shouldn't be necessarily the end. The end is like, let's get better. Like, and there's several ways of doing that, and they will coexist.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Mariana, and keep motivating us. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Straight, blunt, and to the point. Thanks a lot. It was pleasure having you as a speaker for this session. Look forward to have more interaction and more support from you for making Women in Agriculture a truly global event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.